Hello everyone and welcome to a video on Pauper UW Familiars. What I'm going to do today is go over the deck, the interactions, and show you some gameplay so you can kind of see how the loops work. Just to go over my deck here, I've got 20 lands. I moved some over here for visibility, but I have 5 fetches, 3 Evolving Wilds, 2 Ash Barrens, I believe 7 Islands, 1 Mortuary Mire. Mortuary Mire can get back stuff from your graveyard, and 2 plains. This leaves me with 9 white sources available and 3 Mystic Sanctuaries, which is our engine of the deck. Mystic Sanctuary says when it comes into play untapped, you can put an instant or sorcery from your graveyard on top of your library, and this happens when you have 3 other islands. This interaction with Ghostly Flicker can sometimes put Ghostly Flicker back on top of your deck, and using the draw 2 from Mulldrifter, draw an additional card, which when the cost is reduced via using a Sunscape Familiar, it lets you draw your entire library for 0 mana. Sunscape Familiar is a defender that says green and blue spells you cast cost 1 less to cast, effectively making it so that when Ghostly Flicker only costs 1 mana, you can do a bunch of crazy things for almost no mana, or sometimes literally no mana. Our deck starts at the 1-drops with Godfar's Faithful. There's been some talk about cutting this or not, but this is your biggest anti-aggro card in the deck. It allows you to easily recast these prismatic strands from the graveyard because you're up to 8 white creatures. And this guy says, whenever you cast a blue, black, or red spell, you gain a life. And because our deck is almost entirely blue spells, we're gaining a life when we're doing anything we want. And it allows for an infinite combo where you have Ghostly Flicker, your Mystic Sanctuary online, and your Sunscape Familiars, and you can just gain infinite life, which can lock up people out of the game. For cantrips, we have 3 Ponders. Just digs a bit deeper. Preordain, the best cantrip in Pauper. Scry 2, draw a card. For our 2-drops, we have our Sunscape Familiar, which is our engine of the deck. So the combination of Sunscape Familiar and Ghostly Flicker. We have 3 prohibits for interaction, trying to stop our opponents from doing things to stop us. We have 3 snaps, which allow us to either bounce an opponent's creature and get a little bit of tempo and mana advantage, or recast Mulldrifters with Evoke, or bounce Seagate Oracles. So Snap can basically turn into, with Seagate Oracle, it's a Sleight of Hand. With Mulldrifter, it turns into a Divination, which is great. Or you can save maybe a Sunscape Familiar from a Savage Swipe or something. Our Echoing Truth here is a Mize so that we can get rid of something like a Journey to Nowhere or a main deck Relic, or a bunch of Battle Screech tokens, whatever we need to, and it can also act as a bad snap on our creatures. Sometimes you run into the case where you have something like 2 or 3 Seagate Oracles in play, you can Echoing Truth them and then get a huge advantage. Prismatic Strands is here as anti-aggro that's relatively cheap, and being able to flash it back from the graveyard is very important. Obviously, it's fairly bad against multicolored aggro decks. I think we already went over Ghostly Flicker. Ghostly Flicker says exile 2 artifacts, creatures, or lands you control and return them to the battlefield. The lands is very important with our Mystic Sanctuary. And our win condition is Sage's Denizen. It says whenever another blue creature enters the battlefield, target player puts the top 2 cards of the library into their graveyard. So while we're looping and drawing our entire library, we can make our opponent mill themselves. Deep Analysis is here as a 3-of near the top end because it's a very good draw spell. If we have 2 Sunscape Familiars out, it's draw 2 for 2 mana, and then even just 1 Sunscape Familiar, it can draw 2 from the graveyard for 1 mana. And then with our Faithfuls in play, that life that we have to pay is not very big a deal. Sideboard here, I've got 1 Prismatic Strands to close out that 4-of. I have 4 Blue Blasts, specifically used against Burn or against Affinity. I have 2 nature's chance here. I want to see as many as possible of these against affinity, and in the leagues we run into that sometimes. The nature's chant we also bring in against things like Stompy or Elves, or a one of against something that's going to bring in a relic. Against Stompy and Elves, this nature's chant can kill the Viridian Longbow, which is one of their ways to kill us without dealing us combat damage. I've got 3 Dispels, counter target instant. I've got 2 Disdainful Strokes. Disdainful Stroke says counter target spell with mana cost 4 or greater. We can use this very effectively against Tron to counter Dinrova Horror, Muldrifter, Mnemonic Wall, a lot of the things that they're spending a ton of mana for, and very cheaply from our end. 2 Negates, and 1 more Deep Analysis. We bring in the Deep Analysis against decks where they're trying to get us with incremental advantages. So, for example, let's say we were playing against Burn. We would want to bring in all of these Blue Blasts and remove Sage's Rodenizen, probably 1 or 2 Deep Analysis, and 1 or 2 Prohibits. The Blue Elemental Blast is going to be a way better counterspell there, and against some decks we actually don't need our infinite combo milieu win condition, because beating down with Muldrifters can be just as effective. Something like Stompy, we would bring in another Prismatic Strands and a Nature's Chant and take out a Deep Analysis and a Sage's Rodenizen. That's a very minimal change, but Prismatic Strands can really stop Stompy in his tracks. Something like Boros Monarch, we want to bring in some additional, or a Nature's Chant, probably a Dispel, just trying to stop their game plan. So essentially, when you're facing a control matchup, you're thinking about, do I want Dispels, do I want Negates, and do I want Deep Analysis? And then against a aggro matchup, you're thinking, do I want Prismatic Strands, do I want my Nature's Chance? When you're thinking about cards to cut, generally the cards that get cut are the Deep Analysis, the Sage's Rodenizen, the Snap, and the Faithful. So against a control deck, we want to take out the Prismatic Strands and the Faithful, some number of Faithful. Sometimes you want to leave 1 in because they are going to be attacking you sometimes. Against a aggro deck, sometimes we want to be taking out the Deep Analysis and the Sage's Rodenizen, and bringing in more Prismatic Strands. There's some interesting decks like Blue-Black Delver or Blue-Red Fae, where really all we do is take out our Prismatic Strands and a Sage's Rodenizen and bring in Dispels and Deep Analysis. So my game plan there is, I'm going to use my Faithfuls to gain life and stop them from really being able to damage me enough to kill me, and then just continue to gain incremental advantages with all my card draw, and then eventually value them out. Oh man. Okay, so that's basically the deck. So now let's go to some of the games I have loaded up. So we're going to start with the Infinite Combo. Here I have 2 Familiars in play. I've got my Mystic Sanctuary online, and I have 3 islands. And interestingly, in this case, I have 2 Mystic Sanctuaries and 3 other islands. That means I have infinite draw, I have infinite life if I want to, and I have infinite mana. Well, blue mana in this case specifically, because I don't have a plains in play. But what I can do is evoke the Muldrifter. First, I always pop out the graveyard here so that I can easily, so that I can try to like manipulate it very easily. So I'm going to evoke my Muldrifter. I'm going to put my stack away from where my flicker is going to be in the graveyard. Always yield to the draw, and then I'm going to float some mana, flicker the land, and the Muldrifter. So this gives me some more triggers. The way that the triggers are ordered is in alphabetical order on Magic Online. So if you get confused about why they're being ordered in different ways, it's specifically because of alphabetical order. So I'm going to click the Moldrifter trigger, and then click the Mystic Sanctuary trigger targeting Ghostly Flicker. Always yield to this. Now I have a hotkey on my keyboard for yes. I'm just going to hit yes. And now I've drawn a flicker again and an extra card. So I can just keep going. I had 9 cards in hand. Now I have 10 cards in hand. And keep going like that. So eventually we will draw our Sage's Row Denizen, and then that'll be the game. Let's see if I can... Okay, so as you're going and playing and trying to mill them out, this trigger here takes a very long amount of time. And even if you always yield to it, you still have to press OK with Ghostly Flicker on the stack after that trigger resolves. So what you want to do is, if you can, get rid of your Godpharaoh's Faithfuls from the board. Snap them right back. Or you can maybe Echoing Truth them back. But that allows you to not have to spend the time pressing OK to those triggers. Let's see if we can preordain for the... Okay. All right, so when you're looping here, eventually you will run out of your library. And this is going to get complicated because I'm going to be milling myself. Save targets, always yield. In this deck, because we have so many actions that we're taking, you want to always yield as much as possible. A lot of times when I'm playing a match, I will F6 aggressively. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to mill myself all the way down to the bottom of my library and then show you how I manage it from there. So in this case, our Ghostly Flicker is going to be ending up down here, and now this triggered ability and stack are not in the right spot. So I'm going to move the triggered abilities down so that it's going to be closer to the Ghostly Flicker. And if I'm doing this where I'm drawing my whole library, I like to tap it for enough mana, play the Ghostly Flicker that's closest to the right side of my hand, and then play the Ghostly Flicker that's... Oh, is this an opponent? No, it's me. Play whatever Ghostly Flickers are in the middle of my hand, and that allows me to not have to scroll over during the combo turn. Okay, so now... So we'll show you how... So now you see it goes Mystic Sanctuary, Seagate, Sage's Row because of the alphabetical order. So in this case, we don't click the left one first when I'm flickering with the Seagate. I have to click Seagate, then click Sanctuary, press OK, or yes. Now, here the library pops up, and when you're looping with the Sage Row and there's 2 other cards, it's kind of complicated because this Ghostly Flicker can be either on the top or the bottom based on the alphabetical order. But you want to move this over to where it's going to show up in your hand. Click that, and then float some mana. Do it again. Press yes. Click it. So because this one has an additional, this loop with the Seagate Oracle has an additional click, you kind of want to avoid doing it unless you have no cards in library, because when you have no cards in library, this is just going to be this Ghostly Flicker here. I can just click it. Another thing you can do to speed up the loop instead of floating mana here is you can click the Flicker, click the Seagate, and then just double click the Sanctuary, which actually selects it for the spell and then it immediately taps it. Sometimes that can cause some lag, so it's something to be aware of. Okay, let's go to this other. So now if you wanted to see the infinite life, basically if we have this infinite loop going, we can just flicker here, and then I gain a 21. Do it again. Ad nauseam. All right, so let's snap this and show you the power of this mortuary mire. So the mortuary mire is important because we can flicker it to get back a creature and then keep stacking the creatures on top of our deck. So let's say we wanted to get back this faithful. We go mortuary mire, mystic sanctuary, flicker, sanctuary mire, and then put faithful, flicker on top. Always yield, yes. Now I'm drawing 2 with the Mole Drifter. I got him back. And my other cards. That's also important if you are, let's say, one of your creatures is dead, like the Mole Drifter's in the yard, and the opponent passes the turn. You can flicker these 2 on their end step, or maybe flicker it on your upkeep. Let's see. Okay, when you flicker it on your upkeep, let's stop here. Nah, I don't want to discard all my cards. When you flicker it on your upkeep, it's pretty cool because if you just had your flicker in your hand and you didn't have any other card draw, you could flicker the Mortuary Mire and the Mystic Sanctuary, put Mystic Sanctuary and Mole Drifter on top, and then draw Mole Drifter for your turn, evoke Mole Drifter, evoke the Mole Drifter, draw the Ghostly Flicker, and then start going. So when you order those things, I'll show you how that works. So you go Ghostly Flicker, these 2. Now whatever one you click first is the one that's going to be on top of your library, because the one that resolves first is going to be underneath it, if that makes sense. So we'll go Mortuary Mire, Mole Drifter, Sanctuary, Ghostly Flicker. Now you can see it puts the Ghostly Flicker on top now. Yes. Now there's a Ghostly Flicker on top of the library. Mortuary Mire on top. Puts Mole Drifter on top. Yes. So now I have Mole Drifter into Ghostly Flicker. So I can, in this case, just flicker here. That draws me my Mole Drifter into my Ghostly Flicker. And then from the other things that we were doing, we have 2 flickers on top. So that's basically our full special combos. Okay, we can also stack our library. Let me just draw my flickers first. Because when we have 2 active sanctuaries, so we have 2 sanctuaries and at least 3 other islands, then we can basically redraw all of the cards from our graveyard and lock our opponents out of the game that way. So when you had the mnemonic walls, basically you could flicker 2 mnemonic walls or 2 Archaeomancers and get back a flicker and some other spell. Now we can do that in this deck, it's just a little harder and it takes a little bit more time. So we go flicker these 2 guys, sanctuary, sanctuary, and let's say I wanted to get back snap. We'll go flicker first, snap second, and then you can cancel. Flicker here. So this is going to draw me my first flicker. This is going to draw me my snap. And then I can just go ahead and snap off my faithful, so he's not wasting our time getting a bunch of life. There's another combo. If you, let's say your Sage's Red Denizen is dead, but you really need to mill out your opponent, what you can do is Ghostly Flicker here, targeting Flicker and Deep Analysis, and then I'll draw one flicker. And then I'll draw the Deep Analysis. Now if you notice, when you or at this point, every flicker only costs you 1 mana, so your deep analysis you're going to have enough mana to play them, but it's extremely slow. And you can make infinite mana by doing this combo. So you can tap 2 islands, Sanctuary and another island, flicker Sanctuary Island, put flicker on top, and then flicker to draw the flicker. So the combination requires 2 active sanctuaries and 2 flickers. Oops, now I'm dead. Okay, so let's go like this. That's okay. Game over, man. So that can make you infinite mana. You have infinite doing things. It's just very slow on Magic Online. There's a lot of triggers going on, so you don't really want to do that unless you have to. If you think that you may need to do this in a tournament setting, you might want to use 1 or 2 compulsive research instead of a deep analysis, because compulsive research can mill the opponent for 3 or make them draw 3, but it's quite a bit cheaper, because if you only have 2 familiars out, the compulsive research is going to cost 1 mana. I'll show you compulsive. Compulsive research says target player draws 3 cards and then discards 2 cards unless they discard a land card. So you can use that to keep targeting your opponent and then mill them out. It's still much slower. Alright, so this one's over. Let me get rid of this game. I have another one for you to explain some things. So here, I've discussed in the past that there's an infinite combo with Ghostly Flicker and Seagate Oracle where you stack your library. So basically, you go Ghostly Flicker the Seagate Oracle. I have no Muldrifter here, so I don't have an infinite combo. But when you say yes, now I know I have a Ponder. I'm going to choose the Flicker. So now my library, at the bottom of my library is the card Ponder. And then the next card is going to be Deep Analysis. So what I do is I open a notepad. I'm writing these things down. Now eventually you'll get to a point where you have, let me just see if I can get there. You'll have a Muldrifter on top. So the Muldrifter will be on top. And you keep looping through your library until you get back to the point where you're choosing between Deep Analysis and Ghostly Flicker. And then at that point, what you want to do is stack the triggers oppositely. So you're going to put the Sanctuary trigger underneath the Seagate. So the Seagate's going to draw you your Muldrifter that you had on top, whatever the card was. We'll draw the Prismatic Strands, and then the Flicker will be on top of your library. Then you can invoke the Muldrifter and immediately draw the Flicker and start going off. It probably takes 10 minutes. So you don't want to do it unless you have a ton of time. And that's it. So that's your stack the library and or loop through your entire deck using only a Flicker, 2 Sunscapes, and a Seagate Oracle, and then you can win from there. Now here we have only our Muldrifter and a Familiar, but we have our Sanctuary active. So if you want, you can use 1 mana and to draw a card. Or if we have a Faithful out, any 1 mana is draw a card, gain a life, which can matter quite a bit. Now doing this, you want to basically, if possible, just draw cards at the end of your opponent's turn and hold up interaction, because if you can, like here I'm tapped mostly down. I can't do multiple things at one time, so even though if I had 2 flickers, it's not going to be able to get me through the game. But you can keep going, drawing a card and a life for every land you have. and eventually dig into your Sunscape Familiar. Alright, so I think that covers the loops for the most part. So let's go look at a sample. Alright, so this is a beginning of a new game. I would probably keep this hand. We don't have a familiar, we don't have a faithful, but we have, what I like to say is, do I have 3 lands and do I have a white source? Here, yes, we do. So I'm going to keep. I'm going to go immediately grab a plains. I go no possible play, yield all for the most part, so that I can immediately, okay, I don't want the snap right now. I do want islands. Let's say this turn they do something, so I go on prismatic strands. And then my turn is pretty good. But I need to draw as many cards as possible. So then on God Pharaoh's Faithful, getting back the Preordained. Deep Analysis. So there I would God Pharaoh's Faithful because I can flashback prismatic strands. Now here I'm looking for a familiar. No, I'll keep that. Sometimes I decide not to put things on top, but when you're digging you want to grab your preordains for sure. There I'm getting rid of the Azorius Chancery because we already have a white source. It doesn't matter to me that much right now. I'm not under any pressure because I have no opponent, so I can draw 2 cards with a Deep Analysis from the yard. Let's see if we can get a faithful familiar. Okay, so we got a familiar. We can snap the Mulldrifter. Once I get my second familiar, the game will be over. So here I've overdrawn, and then we'll think about what cards to discard. I discard the Prismatic Strand so I can flash back from the yard for free. In this case, since I have this Ghostly Flicker and my Mulldrifter, and I have this Sunscape Familiar, I'm probably going to start discarding cantrips that I don't want. Here we'll lead off with a cantrip just to see on the bottom. We'll do a Mulldrifter shenanigans. Oh. Okay, so here's one more thing that I didn't explain. So, because I have one familiar and there's more than 3 other islands after these Mystic Sanctuaries, I can actually Ghostly Flicker both of these together and get back Flicker and Snap for free. So it costs me no mana to put those on top of my deck. And then I'll... Can I play this? Deep Analysis. Shows me Flicker Snap. And snap this guy. So the fun part about this deck is that you're just drawing a bajillion cards, like getting all this life. Okay, so now next turn we win. So I want to show you one more thing. Okay, so let's say I have tapped out of my white. I have no white mana. What I can do is, in this case, I'm going to flicker here, putting the flicker on top. I'll play my familiar, get my flicker, and then that's the game. Let's see what else can... I think that pretty much covers everything. If you have any specific questions, go ahead and let me know. I hope this was helpful, and I hope that you enjoy Familiars if you play it. If you're playing against me or anybody else on Familiars and you're not having a good time, just go ahead and hit the concede button. The loops take a really long time, and no one wants to be sitting there having it happen. Thanks, and enjoy your Pauper.